Sangye Jedang Choji Jonala Chanchi Bardu Dami Gyazuji Dami Chiji Bibi Sola Jolam Beche Sangye Jogara Sho Sangye Jedang Choji Jonala Chanchi Bardu Dami Gyazuji Dami Chiji Bibi Sola Jolam Sangye Jogara Sho Sangye Jedang Choji Jonala Chanchu Bardo Dani Dani Shishi Gibi Sono Dwala Beji Sanjim Jogara Kanki Tuzini Zone Tawa Tamji Tambi Chere Tambi Chun Tenze Kodam Kela Chanze Lo. Good evening. Dine Tanda Gaurum Chigi Penduchu Sunday Namolaya Ji Netsu Deni Tenshipi Denji Kawan Judo Chishingi Semi Trami Kapsum Tebatin Tam Sao Super Chingi Labs Nanchugi Dom Tartu Bodoch and the Son Yoresra.
Geshe started off with a prayer for the 17 Panditas that was composed by His Honesty Dalai Lama. I'll just try to pull it on the screen.
Should we put the screen?
No, I think it's all right. Anyway, can't find it. So, in the prayer, His Honest mentions the basis, the two truths, how the younger did say the Karina?
Jinetsu Deni Tenshiba Jinetsu Dembani Dembani Lateni Dembashi Wuntravel Deni and it Gabsumaya and it Shin Tevatubi Gamru and Deni and the Tower Drivi Lam Zawatsu Denitsu do Sora.
So in this verse, His Honest mentions the summary of the different elements that we cultivate. First of all, the basis, the two truths, expanding on that, the four truths. And it depends upon those four truths, we go for refuge. And through that, we follow the path that leads to liberation.
Odirida, the Chitan Tagaran Riostera, Carsevata, Sanji Chu Nimbudi, our Denjon, the Java Samnavati. Tartupa Teres, the Sanji Chu Nimbudi, our Denjon, the Java Samnavati. The Tao Denjon Tom Xiaondi, Jingubi Nitsudi, Ton, the Lam Jotang Ramadi, Jingubi, Neludan Tumitone, Lam Drotsuchik, Tirendos, right?
So this is how we proceed in general. So the Buddha gave teachings pertaining to the two aspects. So the two aspects of the Buddha's teachings, the philosophical view of dependent origination and the practice of non-harmfulness. So whatever path we take up, it is based upon the way that things exist at the actual basis, the way that things exist in reality.
Tirda Tichi Zambala, any Tiang Ti, any song di kong tu sa zo di jizun chambong gombu ani tenjung ngondo geng nalo la ya damnga che ondi ra damnga che vi kabdu la ya driptans demba namdan sanjila so konjo soms odus odelia kontu wings song yore jawaram chi.
Isana says that in composing this praise for the 17 masters of Nalanda, he said that these teachings are based on the Abhisamaya Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization that was composed by the Venerable Maitreya. And the ornament for clear realizations is divided into different parts, different topics. One of the topics is called instructions. So within those instructions, we have the presentation of the truths, the two truths, the four truths, refuge, and so forth.
Terdinzata sangi gi chu tumo wangi keju di shidemba nida lam tabshi ni toni kebar tengu do asra.
So then the features of the Buddha Dhamma, the Dhamma that the Buddha taught, are the two truths as the basis, and depends upon which we develop the two paths, the path of method and the path of wisdom.
Reta demba ni sheundi ani kunzu gi demba da tendam demba ni sheundi ani zu di che nam gi yotsul yilu di ani zo she goras che nam gi yin chu yolu sheundi ani da ani nganchu gi che nam gi nelu la ya kandas shinjulo do shu yobadi ani mari zandan di and dining won't reach dining gores the di ra maribagi chadang tsawachi teletembi ani linyung di shangon di kyu ani kewani kewa gyunchil ta dungan nela phone deba di and tsawa dele tugoras ra.
So we said that when we look at this, the presentation of the Buddha Dhamma, at the very basis, we have the two truths. So what are they? They are conventional truths and ultimate truth. Ultimate truth is the way that things exist, the way they are in an actual sense. So then when we start to look deeper into the way that things exist in an actual sense, the way they are, we see that we have an ignorance consciousness in our mind stream that erroneously apprehends the way that phenomena exist. But its mode of apprehension is mistaken. And because of that erroneous mode of apprehension of ignorance, anger, attachments, and so forth arise. And when those afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and so forth, take control over our mind, we find ourselves again and again in samsara, in cyclic existence, overwhelmed by suffering.
Ani dordichin shuyusra that any kabo kazi demba shishi is like demba shishi only any kasuchi danji chudu shegi beslara that chudu di ani chudu di gang rains tara
Tanda di shugi.
That digital ya right.
So then in taking up this topic, this general teaching for the Thursday evening teaching, there was a section of questions and answers, and a request was made to Geshe to maybe include teachings on the 16 aspects of the four truths within the presentation of the four truths. So Geshe thought of proceeding with that, right? So including the 16 aspects within that. So let's see if Kadra is here. Kadra was the one that asked about it. Let's see if she's here.
Tinza takazing dembashi. Dembashi di chidang sangi chutong song kalaya. Dembashi song yora. The dembashi di 수 주주가 자야다 지당 벨레라고 라 뎀바실이야 아니 기주시시 자원디 이 주주 차거라.
The Buddha taught the four truths, and within them, he taught 16 aspects. Now, the 16 aspects are divided four for each truth, right? So, since we have four truths, each one of them has four aspects. We have the 16 aspects of the four truths.
Telda sanji thongmang songdigi dan din dungan pabi demba was. Tad dugden songras ra. Tad ne sanji thoma dugden song goyagi. Dugden karchin song gores lawandi. Ani ngansu dungan dugiyo marwas. Dungan mendengejilaya dungan karchin tengres. Ra mi kashilaya dungan korsiya zawini 아니 수행 중에 마경애들이 다 윤거라서라 이내야 산기기 통마 아니 가진 동안 쓴 거랬어.
When the Buddha gave teaching, first off, he started speaking of true suffering. He said, this is true suffering. So he pointed out that true suffering, and you might wonder, what's the reason that this is the first teachings that the Buddha gave? Well, we want no suffering. We want no suffering, and yet the Buddha spoke of suffering first off when he started giving teachings. And there are people, of course, there are some amongst us that do not want suffering, and the whole teachings on suffering for them is something that is unpleasant. So you might wonder, what's the reason for beginning with suffering?
치치니기 동아그 민 라운드네 아니 센 순드 차고로스
It happens, right? We dislike suffering. So then if we just hear the word suffering or pain, it elicits a certain reaction, unpleasant reaction. It happens, right?
제 디즈타 산지기 딘 동안파비 데모스 라운디 마가니기 동아디 문제 지원디 페나트치 산지기 창주 담았음 죽사디 아니 계란기 추즈 뉴시자지 나마네 자치 진데 종데기 아니 리보델리아 아니 창주 죽치니 디둥한 파비 디둥한 덴바레다스 아니 디송요레스트라.
So then when we look at what the Buddha spoke of to begin with, we said that in the first teachings, he said that such and such is true suffering. What he pointed at is the thing that we care for all day long. For 24 hours a day, we care for the body, right? We nourish the body, we take care of the body. The Buddha pointed at this and said that this is true suffering.
다들 디송디 다 간다도 차도고스 라운디 자와니니 베미 코란 콘데메주 동아디 아니 다 산지기 송단 제바이나 아니 미 코란 콘데메주기 아니 율디 디치트신 데디 유소르치 소즈메지 간살이야 아니 디 코란 종 디페 자치문진 데디 유치 아니 차도에 디삼발라 다 가르쳐 당간주 빼나 원한간주 뇽바레베스 다 가르세르스르지 다 성슈 당은지 뭐이나 다 캔서 쇼를 차송스 로간주.
So then when we look at these basic teachings that the Buddha gave, he started to speak about what we dislike, suffering. And then he pointed at the thing that we care for all our life, 24 hours a day. The thing that rather than seeing in suffering, things that we do not understand in suffering, he pointed at that and said that this is in an actual fact, it is suffering. We like this body, we see this body as being very precious to us, and yet the Buddha pointed at it and said, this is suffering. So we become attached to this body, but do we recognize this body as true suffering? We don't do it.
제 딘자 다디 당간주 뇽바 마레 이내양 안주기 아니 마시비 왕기 동화 문지 마시비 왕기 아니 동화를 취지 당간주 제대치니 달 하데 여버디 시우슈지레스.
So the Buddha pointed it and said that this is true suffering, and we become attached to it. Are we going crazy? So we're not going crazy. It is rather that it is due to a lack of understanding that we adhere to the body in such a way. It is due to unknowingness.
Rather, tinza 점든디 토마 동아디 송고야디 동아 문진 투고관자 만주 짜님 되게 매기 취디 만주 문진 마토가나 노르데와 단다바도 만주 노르데요레 단다이는 노르는 들어와이나 아니 민투는다 딘디지라 타로원자 아니 문지야디 케치슈레야 아니 지난치네 만주레야 딱 모두 수디 아니 디 동아레다스 디 동아레다스 but this one is.
So the Buddha first of all discussed on suffering because we need to recognize this body as being true suffering. It is due to a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding that we make mistakes in our approach. So then in order to be able to recognize that, first of all, the Buddha pointed at that and say, this is true suffering. First of all, the Buddha discussed on suffering.
Rada nganju namgyu dunghar silaundigi ji kaso ta cho dunghar pigi go na ya do da ji chogo na ya so ba kanji dimji ji la ya ma to bi en di gi nasa gi shikora ani dunghar yimba ji nganju samna solgyo marwas ro.
But then when we look at our understanding of the term suffering, in Buddhist terminology, the term suffering has a greater meaning than what we normally make of it, right? So when we think of suffering, pain, what comes up to our mind is a physical sensation, like having a headache or having a stomachache, right? This is the thing that we think of first and foremost when we think of suffering. But then the Buddha spoke of the basis of such sensation, the foundation of that sensation. And he said that that very foundation is suffering. And this is something that we don't see, that we don't recognize.
Tereda tinza ani shiden koran ani nganzu pumbudi ani dugdengi ranshin imbachi. Ro dugdengi ranshin imbachi sorwaina ta ani mundibi dungar di munzi tuwachi yungyoras.
So if we were to recognize the basis for such sensations, the aggregates that we have as being in the nature of suffering, then we can understand all the unsought suffering that we experience.
That digi ngaruzugi that pumbudire ra nganzu chide pumbudi that dunga kandas chagres. Dunga kandas chagres su hakores ezuruchi. Re su hakores lavdi moye nesu siktungi ani kewi kedu paba chogi ngosomdur ko tongyordas. Then dunga pabu demo said. Tanda deres ra.
So we say that the thing that we care for so much, what we cherish so much, this body, is true suffering. So how does it become suffering? Who sees that? Who knows that this is suffering? We speak of those high-level practitioners, which are highly distinguished. We call them Arya beings, right? Arya is a word from Indian language. We call them Arya beings, those highly distinguished practitioners who came to see that perceptually. They came to see the body or the aggregates as being true suffering. For them, it is reality, it is real, or it is true suffering.
Tilda that dindi re da dindi re. Tinza dindi dunga di da dunga karsota kanachin ngazu phumbu di ani duden di kyobares. Ro thambu nin ji gygen khana ya madeba ani duden di chodebare ona gyoten kenjila teni dunga ngu chobares lawandi gygen khana madebe dyji chuji misik barwas. Tinza ko duden di kyobadi gyoten kenjila teni duden chagu barwas. Ro
So we pointed this body that we have and we say that this is true suffering. So what makes it true suffering? Is it that right from the very get-go, without depending upon causes and conditions, it was established, came to be as true suffering? Or is it possible that in depending upon causes and conditions, it came to be as an entity of suffering? Well, first of all, it is a composite. It is what we call a compounded phenomenon. And if it's a compounded phenomenon, it depends upon cause and conditions. There are no compounded phenomena that are independent from causes and conditions. So, in depending upon a certain set of causes and conditions, it came to be, it was established in the nature of suffering.
제 nganju semna야 가르삼 거스는 망체지 나다가다와기 아니 간사기 삼로라야 아니 풍부디 아니 자원님지 아니 규도메 규로지 비기게 따바템보 슈지기 다 잔신이 뭐 설대관자 사만로다 아니 풍부 거랑기 내로다 만tum비기 아니 로신주 로직이 따주지 레샤스 마도 코랑기 내루디 딘지 마르다스로 아니 비기 가서다지 오 아니 규라신지 임바 메다바 임바 단 규라신지 메다바 임바 아니 둥하와 임바 되니 아니 다 동바다 다음에 빛나바 어딘지지기 다 계주 시den도 아니 조여레스 라운디 다 둥하 뎀비기 아니 계주 시디 가나야 밤 drogo라스라.
And then we investigate the notion of our body, how we apprehend our own body. So Geshe said that, like, for example, when he thinks of how he himself relates to his body, in his mind, there is that sense that the body is permanent, the body is stable. There is the sense of stability and a certain degree of eternity to the body, which means that on the notion of the body, how we apprehend the body, is erroneous. It is erroneous with respect to reality, the way that it is. So, in essence, the nature of this body is impermanent. So we start pointing out the attributes of this body, which we call true suffering, right? So it is impermanent, it is in the nature of suffering, it is empty, and it is selfless.
데리다 아니 다치 아니 숑루 딘디 다 시뇽인지만은 숑나노라야페 아니 소소라야 베균생 거친 라 빌이야 아니 취진송 아니 사와크 인타크 도시어레스라 아니 용단로지 나란 수지 풍부디 아니 풍부디 미달바레 다스 카인스나 젠가키 젠강가 어두스 가두이는 따바템보 싸우니는 네 무퉁이 진짜 아니 미달바레스.
So then when we point out those aspects of this aggregate, this body, which is what we call true suffering, we begin with the attribute of impermanent. Now, it is impermanent. Actually, when you look at each one of those 16 aspects, there is a certain argument that is being presented, and it is presented in a strict language that we used in philosophy. So you present a certain argument in, first of all, presenting what the subject is, right? You're speaking about something, so you present the subject, then you predicate it with something, you claim something about it, and then you provide a reason for that. So just in order to illustrate how you would do it, the subject would be this aggregate, right? So take this aggregate, what we predicate it with, it is impermanent. This is what we claim. It is impermanent. Now we need to provide it with reason, because it is intermittently produced and it intermittently disintegrates, right? That's the reason, which means that it doesn't stay the way that it is. It changes from moment to moment. Because it changes from moment to moment, this body is impermanent. This aggregate is impermanent.
Reda di riglam rawdi, ra di riglam di nenga des chik shimbay da nganzu nenga tsamada lab tu mar tu zuta kanji yomar di nenga des chik shimbay na di rigba di tsamala pa jar choya chik yores bena ani nganzu da subo di suzu chede chede subo di da midagwa res lawndi Mitagwa res laund, but kichi gini, gyundroge res. Res laura. The yimbi ginsen kar res. The misuina, the chiglaura, the yimbi ginsen kar res. Laundi, yimbi ginsen karsna, rangaki rangan gardu was. Ginsen tukur. Ona rangaki rangan gardu in jimbana, Madawa in gogreves. Yimbi cabgreves, Tani, that is young Tanira. In gogreves. Or the little lavan, gogres, cabres. Rangakia rangan any guarding chujina, Matang Matawa Main Kenji, Zawin in your mares. But Dilla was raw.
So we're using a language of logic, and there's a point in using that language. When we look at this topic, the way that we use logic, and Geshe said that we're not going to be able to speak about it at length. We don't have the time to do it, but we can get a head around the way that you would use logic, and then you can apply that to other things as well. You can apply it to everything. Like, for example, when you begin with the body, we said that the body is impermanent. It is impermanent because it changes momentarily. So why is it like that? Why does it changes? Why do we claim that it changes momentarily? Well, because it is intermittently produced and it intermittently ceases. Well, does it have to be like that? Is it that whatever is impermanent is whatever changes from moment to moment is intermittently produced and intermittently ceases? Yeah, there is a pervasion here. This is the way that we use, this is the language that we use. It is pervasive. It is like that.
Terda ni number two laya, any rangaki rangan guarding in chik, himbalaya, any chik that the metaba aina samsongi. Tobado dindiavana, come to Tevatam, didn't answer and such a chimudores, ra.
So now think about it and see if you have any doubts or queries with respect to that. Geshe presented here a certain argument. He said, if it is momentarily, if it changes from moment to moment, it is intermittently produced and it intermittently ceases. Can you come up with something that is intermittently produced or intermittently ceases that does not change from moment to moment? Do you have a doubt or query with respect to it? Not only you guys here, but also the people at home. If you have any doubt or any example that you have in mind for something that doesn't fit that explanation, please don't hold back. Fire on.
Tirda di riglam gi dredi nenga di nanchu jangin jilaya ngebart goyachik res.
So we use such logical tools, and in Buddhism you certainly need to have those logical tools.
Kansina nanchu di jangya nanchu jang kabdulaya ting and tsubu shujla pa drogo goras droyalaya gyunsen ton ro gyunsen chigdan gyunsen nidan gyunsen sun gyunsen korang tone and drone di ting ringbu shujla pa and drotu gores bet zawa tartu ba dilaya and char tuyagi lamga di gyunsen ton drogores ro manzu karing ngeba ni guyonaya gyunsen yobayna and le cheba cheji ngudo asro gyunsen mena 다가라 샤자야 그렇지. 자기도 왔어.
So we certainly need to use those logical tools. We need to have them. And the reason for having to have them is that when we put it into practice, the Buddha Dhamma, we want to go deep. We want to reach to a deeper level. So the way to get to deeper levels is through reasons, through logic. So we use one reason and second reason and third reason. And through that, we penetrate deeper and deeper levels till we can get down to the very root. If you see the reasons for different things, then in your mind, you can take them up. You can hold on to certain things in your mind if you see the reason for them. Whereas if it doesn't make sense to you, if it is not supported with reason, it's likely you're just going to kind of set it aside.
Terdanza tangazu denjida nyamdu te ringlam dia testis jangin drogindas ro ta shung tanya noloya ani subu delaya minshi ani nyawale mi phumbosi min tayores ta nyawale mi phumbodu chuji metak ba yindi renga ki bichirs renga jong bichirs Dindikogores.
Jom. Okay. So we're here speaking of the four truths, and Geshe wants to bring into this discussion the logical tools that we use in approaching this material. So we're positing logical arguments, right? So first of all, we're dealing with this body, and this body is called in Buddhist terminology, there is a particular term for that. It is called the appropriated aggregate. So this is our subject here. This is what we discussed, the appropriated aggregate, the body. It is impermanent because it is intermittently produced. It intermittently arises.
Tiza that the Gunzen delia that Kawa Yoda Meset. The Yashu Tiris, and it Janga Kivaina, and it Medava Kiji Gudroim be Kavrives such. Tiransing Legoros, that and it did it.
So we formulated a certain argument, a certain reason, right? So I'll just repeat the reason. Take this appropriated aggregate, or take the body. It is impermanent because it is intermittently produced. That's the argument, that's the reason. Now, what we need to check now whether the reason is pervasive. When we check if it is necessarily pervasive, what we want to check is if it is intermittently produced, is it necessarily impermanent? If it is intermittently produced, is it necessarily changing from moment to moment?
That digi riba digi kardugores laundi, and in Nanzu Zachimushu Zindeagi, Pumudi, any Kichik Gundrung, Gu Ranshin Jimbati, any Dugores, Ra.
So we're using this reason because we want to address the thing that we hold so dear, what we hold as something that is very precious to us, which is our own body, the aggregate. And what we claim that it is something that changes from moment to moment.
다들이 다 디드벌 되니까 아니 가서다 지 좀급도 마스는 갔던 거였는데 간주 샘라야 힌길이야 따바 때문 진대지 라 품부디 따바 때문 진대야기 상로디 아니 농축 진진 바치 아니 리비 람 된거였다 균생 람 된거였어 라
So why are we using such an argument and hold on to it kind of with in a forceful way or point to this argument? Well, we point at the argument pertaining to the body, right? So the body is impermanent because it changes from moment to moment because it is intermittently produced. Because in our mind, there is that notion of stability with respect to the body, as if it is permanent, as if it is eternal. So we want to use a logical path in order to disprove the way that we normally apprehend the body.
예, 먼저 따바 때문에 증거여봐도 가르쳤으나 가뜩이는 찌릿치지 디코랑 미치드 라 내가치 지워진 로고라서 델레 테스팅 요드온디 만디바 차온디 아니 샘노라야 나사타 마기바 차 두스 로고라서 라 디기 따바 때문에 진데가 여봐디 디기 균센 디톤 된거도 왔어.
When we look at a day-to-day approach to the body, we care for the body so much. We hold the body dear. We cherish it so much. And when we look at what we do on a daily basis for the sake of caring for the body, we get so busy. We do so many things. So much hard work is going into sustaining the body, which we perceive as something that is permanent or something that has a stability within it. And then things go wrong, right? Something happens to the body and the mind becomes full of pain. We become unhappy because something happens to the body that we care for, that we have apprehended something that is stable, something that is permanent. So we're using those logical tools, logical reasons in order to get a head around our wrong way of relating to the body.
대다야 아니 리바 디토네 균센 디토네 만주 퐁부디 규비 란신진지 임바치 아니 규비 란신진지 임바치 된거레스 라
So then we're using this reason in order to show that the nature of this aggregate is the nature of change.
단 규비 란신진지 임바 때마 디기 아니 단 규비 란신진지 임바디 만주 다 신고로 왔어 난주 퐁부디 교 드론디디 샘라 무즈바키야디 이게 아니 삼로 테다 퐁부 코랑기 니루 규비 란신진지 임바님부디 아니 차트에 마송스 따라 단 규비 란신진지 임바지 뒤딱도 아니 문초기 여바이나 콘 규바 드르 깔이야 샘마기바 제고야기 아니 내당 거라 다 마송스 따라.
So the nature of this body, this aggregate, is a nature of change. But since this is its very nature, it is in the nature of change, we can see the discrepancy between the way that we relate to the body and the way that it actually is. We don't understand that nature of the body. And because we have that discrepancy between the way that it is and what we think of that it is, or the way that we apprehend it, then we experience difficulties and problems when this discrepancy is revealed. But then if we were to understand the nature of the body, when those changes come through, when they unfold, and the mind sees the changing nature of the body, there wouldn't be that discrepancy that normally occurs, and therefore we will not be caught unprepared.
디자 아니 디 내가 탓 두버러지 내가 치슈지기 아니 니디 아니 부모들 교회란지 임바 교회 대한 끼지끼지래야 교족이 란지 임바 어디때문에 뒤따도 먼저 샘나로야 진주디 아니 신주로 임바 농주 진지 임바지 땡고도 왔어.
So then looking at what we are discussing here at the moment, so the final point is asserting a couple of things with respect to the body. We are setting that the nature of the body is a nature of change, but on top of that, we say that not only it's in the nature of change, it changes from moment to moment. So that's one thing. And then we also recognize that our apprehension of this body that changes from moment to moment is erroneous. It is mistaken.
Dini madrasa dusata. Dini nibadelaya pumbudi dunga wares. Pumbudi dunga giranshin res. Yimba karesna ko leda nyumubigi shawanchin redos. The imichers redos ya dire. Gunzen dikoyores.
So we said that there are four attributes with respect to, or four aspects with respect to true suffering. That was the first one, right? It is impermanent. Let's move on to the second aspect of true suffering. The second aspect is that it is misery. To say that it is misery is to say that it is in the nature of suffering. So again, keep in mind that what we're dealing with now is the aggregate, this body. So this body is misery, in a sense that it is in the nature of suffering because it is under the control of karma and afflictions. That is the reason, because it is under the control of karma and afflictive states. It is in the nature of suffering.
레뉴기 샤완지 레세야기 레다 니무코라 아니 야부지 원지 마투디 디 샤완디 교로 여바디야 당 원지야지 당 카고로서 다 카고로다 레스타디.
It's a complicated reason, right? We formulate here a certain statement, a logical statement. Take this body or this aggregate. It is in the nature of suffering because it is under the control of karma and affliction. So to say that it is under the control of karma and afflictions is not something that is easy to get. It's quite complicated. In order to understand what it means to be under the control of karma and afflictions, first of all, we need to recognize what they are. What are afflictive states? What is karma? And then we can understand what it means to be under the control of these two.
다 레다 뉴몬비 샤왕디 귤츠로디 아니 간다스 귤바데스 라운디 먼저 봄부디 간다스 추바데스 이진도 섬당고서 간다스 추바데스 라운디 코 단지 콘도 쉬고 나신기 다가스 아니지 규긴 가나야 마데바 아니 봄부디 추데바 지레스나 디마라스 런두지기 줄에 디 무시관자 규긴질 땡근자 다 규긴디 제제야데 따라 규긴 제제를 가둘어야 다 아니 즉 제주야고 통인지기 로 아니 여기 다 남주용인지기 제주온디 아니 레다 뉴몬에 투바디 아니 또 투고레스 따라 또 투고레스.
So we're dealing here with being under the control of karma and afflictions. So in what way are we under the control of karma and afflictions? So to be more specific, what we're seeking to prove is that this body, this aggregate, is in the nature of suffering because it is under the control of karma and afflictions. So in what way is it under the control of karma and afflictions? Well, when we say that this aggregate is under the control of karma and afflictions, what we refer to is the way that it came to be, the way that it was established. It was established under the control of karma and afflictions. So how do we approach that statement that it came to be or it was established under the control of karma and afflictions? Well, this aggregate depends upon cause and conditions, right? It is a composite phenomenon. It is a compounded phenomenon. And as such, it is impossible for something that is composite, something that is compounded, to not depend upon cause and conditions. So it does depend upon cause and conditions. And the next question is, what then are the causes and conditions that brought forth this body? So here we're starting to look at a more detailed investigation. And when we approach that investigation with logic, now an intelligent person will come to see at the end, they will come to realize at the end that of those causes and conditions, they were controlled by karma and afflictions.
Rawan tsawnin mundos. Nenga jigdin tiongors, ta rawan mev tsavijila, shawan the church sajujila, ta any penangam's midojina, rawan mena, and kalishudo sra.
When we look at the notion of being under the control of karma and afflictions, we can also look at the words that we use in Tibetan language in order to describe that sense of not having control. So not having control or freedom or being under the control of something else, it means that you have no power. The power is in the hands of another factor or something else. So since the power of human beings, right? So think about a state in which you will have no freedom or no independence. You'd find it really hard, really difficult, right?
Till the dig any cartoon Islam, Manzuchi any Lu dig tonda, Chick Deji shows Tunguaba, Deji Zawado Imbach, Shelashanta, any that legation Drogoras, the digi, any Samuel digi, and in Yuatango Yavachita, Samuel did non true changimba, the Muyan is the Mintuba Jimba di, and Ripa di Lamni.
So if you wonder, what are we seeking to prove here? Well, we'll look at the attitude that we have in relation to the body. So with respect to the body, we apprehend the body normally not only as something that is permanent or something that is enduring, something that is stable, but also we have that notion as if it is the source of so much pleasure. It is the source of happiness and well-being. This is another attitude that we have with respect to the body. So we're addressing those attitudes that we have with respect to the body, and we're looking at whether they are in line with reality or whether they're mistaken or not. So then we'll look at the second feature of true suffering. Although we hold the body to be the source of happiness and well-being, this is mistaken. It is under the control of karma and afflictions. So then when we start to think about it, we can see that the thing that we care for so much, what we cherish so much, this very body, this aggregate, it doesn't stay the way that it is. It's not that it is a changeless thing. It's actually goes through the process of transformation in which it doesn't improve. It actually goes from bad to worse as time goes by.
Tereda ta khaju sigi jedeji khaju sigi yagu cheba ina ya tsaw nini bi dabu jam mudungi ani and di dindi dilaya ani tuzu shu tangba yin yang dindi do cha so ra dindi do cha so.
So how much we care for the body, how much we cherish this body. And yet, no, we hold this body as something that we own, that belongs to us. And we spend so much time in caring for the body. And yet, at the end, you don't achieve a lot of things. You achieve something that is actually quite minute.
Kanji digi ani rawam de meba ani shyawa yimba kaddu na chi thamandi ba yonde ki ko ku ranshin yimba chi ani yunzen ti tonda jugudos kanji ani karsota rimbanyi ba dungawa singi di ani shyawa de churde yoba rawam meba chi ro dindiji juguores.
So there is no independence in that the power belongs to other factors. And therefore, there will always be states in which things do not work quite right for us because we don't have that freedom, or the body doesn't have that freedom, that sense of independence. The power is in the hands of other factors. This is the meaning of being under the power of something else, not being independent.
Tere kanji gyunsen ashinigi tone ani dortsu dyong digi ani pumbu ranshin kanyin bachi ani sardun chigores su ta chik ani siwiji su tengoros ra.
So then when we look at those two aspects that we've mentioned so far, when we look at those two reasons, we can become very clear, crystal clear about the nature of the aggregates, the nature of the body. So we had 4 aspects to true sufferings, right? We mentioned the first 2. The third and fourth aspects of true suffering are empty and selfless.
Terida zavigi tat tongdamegi ma namja chedanti tat chumda mawa shigi gi ndetsula ma jarwaina ani tat ting rimbu gyachimbu ani chabu ani ngandro pe chabu dindus chabu dos ra.
So when those aspects are explained, those aspects of true suffering pertaining now to the body, to the aggregate, the third and fourth aspect are empty and selfless. Now, in order to understand them, you look at different texts, different scriptural systems, and you go into the presentation of the different schools of thought within Buddhist philosophy. There are 4 schools of thought within Buddhist philosophy. So you're going deeper and deeper and adopt a vast or broad understanding of what it means to be empty and selfless. And along the way, it becomes more and more complicated. Geshe finds this topic, himself, he finds this topic to be really complicated. He doesn't claim to have a complete and perfect understanding of it.
Terida majaron dige ani chigbare danji chujendi pumbodre manzu pumbodi ani tombares tom sadi igi gyunzen la karkorsna da ten shingi dagi tombichers ten shingi dagi tombichers lawndi da kharlagors lawna ani pumbodi ani koran dan ani ngon tadebe ani jeme tenjin jigi dagi tombishar seruch.
So we look at the third aspect, which is the aspect of empty. So again, what we deal with is this body, right? We said, or the aggregate. The aggregate is empty. It is empty because it is empty of a self of an alternative meaning. this is how it is stated, right? So it is rather complicated. It is empty of self, of an alternative meaning. What it means is that when we look at this body, kasadi pombo di ngo shen tade. So we say that this body is empty of a self that is a different, unrelated entity, right? So it's different entity to the body. It's also unrelated to it. So it is empty of that alternative self.
And the Karlawars Laundi, Nanzugi, Ni Pombos Laundira, Ni Lakpa, Ni Go, Ni Supo, Ni Sems Laundi, and some Lusulaya, Ni Pombos Laundi, some Lusurdalaya, Carriers Laundi, Na singing di, and Pombo Tidam, and bet logic you used. Loss you used, Pigitachi, Jemmy Tenzing storage. So
it's quite a clunky way of expressing that, right? So it's empty of a self of an alternative meaning. So what does it mean? Well, we look at the notion of I that arises in our mind when we think of my, right? So this is my body, this is my hand, this is my head, this is my mind, right? So we refer to those things as mine. And when we think of my hand, my body, my head, and so forth, on the side, there is that notion of self that arises in our mind, the notion of me. And the way that I or me appear to the mind when we think of my head is as if this I or me that is separate from the body. So this notion of I or me that is totally separate to the body is what we seek to disprove. This is mistaken because there is no I or me that exists separately to the body in a sense that it is totally unrelated to the body. That sense of self that is unrelated, separated and unrelated to the body does not exist.
The dig John digi any na said it and it chigi that shan the pashani so soon pumbolia de mugunging and it chig round the yubigi Karsoda Zinsuchik Telegores Taro.
Which means that here we investigate a certain notion of self, an apprehension of self that arises in our mind. When we think of, for example, my body, my hand, and so forth. So the notion of I or me that it appears to my mind as if, let alone it does not depend upon others, that notion of self appears as if it doesn't depend even upon the body. It exists completely independently from the body.
The deal Levaina, Tile on Digi, and Shana to make some look to Shin, Yavar to be some of the soba. Shana to make some of the soba. Samalo Ranchin Shidento, Duzu Chigdos.
So then when we have that notion of independency that arises in our mind, as if a notion of independent self that exists in that way, we then think that we do not depend upon others, that I do not depend upon others. And that opens the door for neglecting others, for disregarding others, thinking that it doesn't matter what happens or what I do, I'm independent from others.
Tilda, Tinza, any Tumamalaya, any Na, Di, any Shin, and Chick Pumbola Sovalaya. So in Dugu Mevachi, Koran Ranja Pevaji, Yoba another Jigger the Diomaris, and in Ngadi, and Pumbolaya, then it talks some, do it some Tony. Shabamato, tell a Madembi, tell a Madubi, Koran Ranja Petungi. Nachik in Yomaris, Menza, Indigin Zinsuldi, non true imbadi, and Gunzin di Tony, Pumbu de down, and down Nanimbodi, and Jimmy Tenje Maimba, 찍을 찍대비 수지 여바 디기 리바 디기 아니 농축진 삼로 디기 중국도 디땡구여서라서 이거래서
So then in action, it's not that the I exists in and of itself, but its own right, independently from the aggregates. It depends only it exists only in depending upon the aggregates. Merely is being imputed, it exists only in depending upon the body. Actually, there is a mutual dependency here, right? The body and the self are in mutual dependency. They do not exist as two unrelated or independent objects. Although it appears to the mind as if they exist in this way, they do not.
데리다 아니 간지 리비기 내 찍디 아니 나다 니 수보세 니 풍부세 니보디 아니 찍을 찍대비 수지 여바 찍다 아니 라운드 매바 라운드 매바 아 참말로 아니 리바디기다 아니 넥 톤에 수다 땡겨레스
So then we are using here a certain logic, a certain reason, right? We prove that the body is empty. So when we address that, we'll look at I and we'll look at mine, what belongs to me. The I and mine are in mutual dependency. They exist in mutual dependency. So here we formulated a certain reason, right? So take the aggregate, it is empty because it is empty of a self of alternative meaning. And that reason can address all those different points that we have mentioned up until now. The I and mine are not unrelated or independent. They exist in mutual dependency.
데리다 간지 너르드남 풍부디 아니 셴라 뜨는 주대와지 마도 아니 매바직다 아니 동바 시비깔이야 대등도 왔다 계주 숨비깔이야 다 계주 시비깔이야 아니 라왕기 주비 다기 동미셔스 라왕기 주비 다기 동미셔스 간지 디깔이야 다 풍부디게 다 내로 탈도거로지 내로 탈도거디 균진 시비깔이야다 땡고레스라.
So that was the third feature, the third aspect of true suffering. Of the aggregate. No, Geshe said the aggregate. So the aggregate is empty. Now the fourth aspect is the aspect of selfless. So take the aggregate, it is selfless. It is selfless because it is empty of an independent self. So here when we state that it is empty of independent self, we're using a certain argument, a certain reason that gets at the final reality, the final way that the self exists.
들다간지 아니 두댕기 계주시 토네 라 추진이 사진 예발을 풍부디 손에 아니 두댕기 계주시 비기다 아니 메타동아 동담의 시기 주주원디게 제 산지기 추기 님보디 다 삼퉁이 곰퉁이 짐바나 다 디니땡이 왔어요. 디니땡 거랬다.
These four aspects of true suffering, right? We've just mentioned them, the aspect of impermanent, in the nature of suffering, empty, and selfless. And this constitutes the very essence of the Buddha Dharma, and through that you can think and meditate of this essence of the Buddha Dharma.
다 가르쳤다. 진짜 딘지직 톤다. 아니 먼저 동har디 무언지온디 다 동har기 지 젤레 네츠 사마로 톤이 아니 동har디 문진 체투바이나 아니 동har디 문제가 난신기 아니 매버 소야디야 탑롬디 더 약슈디 니고로 왔다 니투고레스로 마다만 동안 문제 신도 동하기 꿀에 주대바이나 되니 다싱인지기 로 대바이나 다 녀베소르스 다 통거로 왔어.
We've spent some time here speaking of suffering, right, in relation to the aggregates. So we seek to develop a better understanding of the nature of suffering, the nature of suffering, the appropriated aggregate, the nature, the function, the way that they are, the reality. And when we understand those different aspects, right, the nature, the function, how they exist in reality, what we come to see is that the unsought suffering that we experience can be eliminated. This is the conclusion that we get to. Otherwise, if we don't think of these topics and we just remain with that notion of, I don't want to experience that, I don't want to experience that suffering, but we don't go further than that, someone with an understanding of true suffering will look at that and think that this is totally senseless.
제다 아니 다 dimji ki dungar di 다 간다질 때니 총르세 계지들이다 아니 니바 아니 뎀바 니바 군중 뎀바디 dunga di dungares 아니 디 아니 간다질 때니 총르다 단지 시대 지과다 규메케메들 때니 진의 초대 요리 유견을 땜바리스나 유견을 땜바이마다 다드 시브로스 다 유견을 땜나 유견 간다질 땡그레스라운디 유견디 소디 레다 뉴무바 로 레다 뉴무바티 다 동하고 규 동하 탐지 종사기 규디 아니 레뉴니 차가도스 디자 텔야 군중 땜바스 동하 군종사기 이제디 차가자 아니 군중 땜바스.
So then, how do true suffering arise? We spoke of true suffering, and the next question is, if we do not wish for the suffering, how do they come about anyway? Just like we said before, when you look into it, you can ask, do they arise without cause and conditions, independently from cause and conditions? Or are the cause and conditions contributing to the arisal of suffering? And in a way that is similar to the manner that we have addressed it before, suffering are compounded. So it's not possible for them to arise without causes and conditions. They arise independent on causes and conditions. So what are the causes and conditions that give rise to suffering? Well, there are karma and afflictions. Karma and afflictions are the true origins of suffering.
테레다 딘자다 아니 군중기 다 체주시디 규 군중 띠에 랍기스라다 규 군중 띠에 랍기 딱 어디래
규 군중
띠에 랍기.
So then there are four aspects to true origins, right? That's the second truth. True origin. Cause, origin, condition, and strong production.
테레다 다 레다 뉴몬바 디게 다 동한기 싸워 치기 비차니 아니 규스 라바레스 다디 간디촌 잔디월 다 조디 동한기 싸워 치기 비차니 아니 규스.
So we are speaking of suffering, right? We said that karma and afflictions are the root of suffering. The root of suffering is karma and afflictions. And because the root of suffering is karma and afflictions, they're called the cause of suffering. So this is the first aspect of true suffering, cause, right? From the point of view of being the root of suffering, karma and afflictions are causes.
Teni gyu kunjung sla. Kunjung sadi pistire. Kunjung sadi ta dunga chik tsam kiene sha sha mayamba. Yang ni yang du kiba chigyanza. Pistire ti kunjung sigres ra.
The second aspect is origin. Now, in order to work with this aspect, we can look at the way that it is expressed in Tibetan. Right? So the word for that in Tibetan is kunjung, consisting of 2 syllables. The first one is kun, which means all, or the entirety of, and jung is a rising, right? So normally we call that origin, but when you look at this particular explanation of the aspect of true origins, that it is the entire source or the entire origin, what it means is that it is not the origin of just one occurrence of suffering. It is the origin of all of them. That's this entire origin of suffering.
Terda gyu kunjung kien slavdi. Ta kien sadi zu hinjik chikinda. Ani nyelengi gyu la soba. Kawkola ya hinjik chengi chigo kawkola nyelengi gyu chigonza. Ani kien sigres. Ta rabki sadi ani chik kiwa tsamma se pegi. Ani shuda kiwi chani. Rabki se boris.
So these 2 common afflictions do not give rise to suffering just once. They do that repeatedly again and again, and therefore the origins of the entirety of suffering. Now, the third aspect is condition. Right? So when we look at this topic of causes and conditions, we apply different divisions to causes and conditions. We speak of substantial cause and cooperative conditions, right? So looking at these 2 common afflictions, in certain situations there are contributing conditions or cooperative conditions. In certain situations there are substantial causes, right? So here we deal with conditions, or also the contributing condition, the cooperative conditions to suffering. The fourth aspect is the aspect of strong production. So it's not that they simply generate suffering in the sense of like a trivial kind of or a generic type of suffering. They generate this a strong producer of suffering.
Terdati re ta dentro dunga pumbo di ani gyu tindichle ten yores sawa tindichle tu yores lawandi karsorda tusa di tindichi yoinza ani dunga pumbo chimbudi jungu yores sawa dil tu yores lawandi ta nganzu kogoya karesna ta dunga torgo yona dunga mundena zavi gyudi meba masuna ani gyugen tsaundi jebu karina ko join imbaros tinza tanga zu dunga mundena ani tsawa gyud kogo yobadi gyud same sogo yobadi ani rilam di tonta ro ribi lamta tembares ro.
So what do we get out of this presentation that addresses or that presents the 4 aspects of true origins, right? So the aspects were cause, origin, condition, and strong production. What meaning do we draw out of that? Well, the meaning that we draw out of that is that suffering, the aggregates, arising depends upon these causes. The root of suffering are these. So this is an aggregate of true suffering. This is a body of great suffering. If you do not want to have suffering, if you don't want that at all, then you need to address the causes of suffering. You need to eliminate the cause of suffering. You need to uproot the cause of suffering in order to rid yourself of suffering. This is the meaning that you draw out of this logic.
Terda dele tzu che tape mombu chagdo asra ta dinji gi ju ani tsawa di 아니 레다 뉴모바티 아니 딱 가와의 유메기 딱 심죽 제거야 가리 임바 심죽 제거야 되다 락고 짬에 수고도 짬발라 디 니버도 제거라서 딱디 아니 가 유메 때문에 담고는 가와의 유메 때문에 소수규런도 생규규 디게 아니 동안 자와 지도 심죽 제거나 랑규가 유베기 아니 레다 뉴모바 디게 아니 소수규기 동아디 규칙을 마도 젠규기 뉴무기 만주결이야 동아 찌고 말았어 된자다 랑규기 레다 뉴무발이야 투데 여바디 로 동아 짜바디 디 만주기 모여내주디 문진 치고 말았어 치투고 말았어
The root is karma and afflictions, and this is how karma affliction. So we need to look at how karma and afflictions rise. In what way do they rise? What are they? And through that analysis and investigation, we need to reach a certain certainty, a certain conclusion that this is what they are and this is how they arise. And then the next question is, where do they exist? Do they exist in somebody else's continuum, or do they exist in my continuum? Had they existed in somebody else's continuum, and that would be the origin of your suffering, that would have some implication. That would not be possible. They exist in our own continuum, in my own continuum. And this is what we need to reflect upon and reach a conclusion, that those origin, the roots of suffering, karma and afflictions are in our own continuum, in my continuum, and this is what I need to abandon. Shall we leave this session here for today? All right, so we leave it here for today. I'm just going to remind you that we have also a morning session tomorrow at 10:30. Geshe will continue with his teaching from Lama Tsongkhapa's Middling Lamrim. Then also some news that have been circulating in the last couple of days. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has agreed to give teachings available to everyone around the world. They're going to be given through live transmission on the 16th and 17th of May, which means next weekend. Are they going to be at 12 or 12:30 afternoon?
12:30.
12:30 afternoon, usual time. So you can go to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's website, www.dalailama.com, and find some more details about these great teachings. I'm going to teach from Nagarjuna's precious calendar, as far as I remember. All right.
Wow.
So we might actually, we might have a Dhamma Galore party here at the center. We might put the screen up in our center, in our Gompa. We might come together.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. Fantastic. Yeah.
Biscuit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Tea, biscuits. Yeah. And if social distancing is going to be trimmed back.
Butter tea.
No butter tea. Diet Coke maybe. But anyway, sorry? Yeah, let's see what's happened next week. If we can have guests, we will. But if not, then it's going to be, it is my party and I cry if I want to. All right, so I'll put the prayers on the screen.
Good night.
All right, so I'll put the prayers on the screen. And all right. Chant New Duda Lama Sangye Dubine Doachi Kama Lupa De Salago Borasho Romboji Magedwan Yuji Jevanya Bame Bayang Kone Kudu Pewarasho Kone Shinganzu Bendan Dewa Malu Jumene Chenre Siwan Tenzi Yanzo
Shabe Sende Bardo Dendu Janjin Jambun Yahweh Tenzin Yobe Wonso Robos Chosun Ko Wele Mondu Pada Sodu Jigundu Shabden Show. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Sorry? Can we have tea, biscuits, ice cream?
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Mocktails.
I'm doing the mornings until 12, but that's okay.
All right.
People can be preparing.
Mm.
Me and Sky will be diligently. Oh. I don't know what really will do. You can decide.
All right. Thank you very much, people. Have a good night.
Thank you, Carson.
Thank you.
That'd be wonderful. We could do lots of offerings.